Hey guys, welcome back to Ranger Survival and Fieldcraft. I'm Andrew, and what I have for you today is a look at a small bushcraft kit that we can take with us into the field. Fits perfectly in our backpack or a haversack or a small kit bag, and it has everything we need to survive, but not only survive, but to demonstrate bushcraft skills in the field. Stand by. Now this kit is perfect for everyday carry to go inside of our assault bag or our backpack, as well as our haversack. We can take these items out of our rucksack, place them in our haversack, and then have everything we need if we need to move away from our rucksack or our backpack, or just have these items on us, and that's all we're taking into the field. These items break down into two basic components that fit inside the haversack, but contain multiple items. That first item is going to be our tarp, or our cover element. This tarp is lightweight and 100% waterproof. We can take this tarp out and use it for shelter as well as for improvisation, but we can also pack extra paracord or extra cordage inside the bag that it comes in because it has so much room. So in this case, we have our quick deploy ridgeline ready to go for part of our shelter system. Now that next item is part of our kit, acting as a container, and we have those two subcomponents now, which is that tarp, and then finally this 1-quart bush pot from Self-Reliance Outfitters. The bush pot here from the Pathfinder School is a smaller version, obviously, of the 2-quart bush pot, which is kind of the standard model of bush pot for bushcraft and field skills. But with this bush pot, it's 1 quart, which means that if we have to actually treat water using chemical means, and this bush pot is all we have, we can be reasonably certain, because most chemical treatment methods require at least 1 quart or 1 liter to treat water using that chemical compound. And so if we have to use chemical means, we can be reasonably certain that we're treating the water effectively and have the appropriate measurement with this 1-quart bush pot. But this 1-quart bush pot also holds the rest of our gear, like bank line. We have that bank line or cordage. We have a small ferro rod, and we have that Swiss Army knife, that Ranger Grip 78, which is a unique knife for Pathfinder and Self-Reliance Outfitters. All the instructors have this knife, but it's a great tool because it has so many functions. But we can take these items, place them back inside the bush pot, and we still have room left over for other items, whether it be food, tinder, different other supplies that we need to take with us in the field. As you guys can see, we can take all the items, place them back inside of the bush pot, place our tarp back inside of its draw bag, and we still just have those two basic components. And we have extra room left over inside of that bush pot if we need to put more supplies in there, like I previously mentioned. And then we can place these items together inside of our haversack or a day bag, a go bag, our assault bag, whatever it is. And we still have room left over inside of our haversack for other materials if we collect fire material or tinder material around the area to bring back to camp with us, or if we have to put other items in there like a shamog or other containers, different materials and supplies if we're going out and about and then coming back to camp at night. This is a perfect small kit for an everyday carry out in the field. Now let's have some fun with this kit. We've got our Swiss Army knife, that Ranger Grip 78. It has a great saw blade on it that we can use not only for notch carving but taking down material. And we're going to use it to harvest this dead standing material. It's about thumb size in thickness toward the bottom portion, and that's perfect for creating toggles. We're going to need toggles today to demonstrate a more enhanced or improved version of the quick deploy ridgeline to set up our shelter quick, fast, and in a hurry. So a good hand length is about the appropriate length for a toggle. We saw the material off, measure again, make another toggle, and now we have 2 toggles ready to go. Now we can take that material, those 2 toggles, and take out our blade from our Swiss Army knife, and a really good blade. But we can use it to actually create trimmed ends of these toggles. The trimmed end is just a carving technique that's part of bushcraft. It's not a must-have, but it helps clean up the ends and makes them look a lot better. And if you use things like tent stakes made out of natural material, a trimmed end is going to help keep that tent stake a lot longer as we bash on it with our baton. But we trim the ends, creating a rounded end, and now we can take that reamer or that awl from our Swiss Army knife and begin drilling through our toggles. We're going to drill dead center all the way through the material as best as possible, creating those holes because we're going to put it on our quick deploy ridgeline. As you can see, we took the toggles and just slid them right over top of our quick deploy ridgeline. We have the toggles outside of our prusik, and we actually added 1 extra prusik a total of 3 prusik in between our toggles. One toggle is right up against our end of the line bowline. The other one is on the opposite end of those prusik on our hank, ready to go. Now typically we would just take the end of the line bowline, get some slack, wrap it around our anchor point, and then find a stick and shove it in between the cordage to keep that bowline in place and begin our quick deploy ridgeline. This time we already have the toggle on the rope, so all you have to do is place the toggle itself through the bowline, and then it cinches down tight against the tree. We still have that other toggle, and we're going to grab the last prusik in order closest to this last toggle that we have. And we're going to grab that as we grab the hank of paracord and walk toward our opposite anchor point. We're going to go around that opposite anchor point or tree with the cordage, and we're going to bring that toggle with us around that anchor point along the cordage. We're going to leave that prusik, the third one, in place on the opposite side, not going around the anchor point. Leave it on that standing side. And then we're going to take this toggle, find that prusik as we come around the anchor point. All we have to do now is pinch the cordage together on the toggle, put the toggle through the prusik, and then just grab the running end and pull tight back toward our anchor point, and it will lock in place without any knots. Perfect. Ready to go. We still have those 2 remaining prusiks on the line, ready for attachment for our tarp at the top 2 corners. So it's just business as usual now. We just create a couple more toggles and some camp stakes, or 2 camp stakes, to go at the bottom corners of our tarp as we get ready to hang this up so we can toggle the top corners and stake out the bottom corners for our lean-to. Now, the methodology behind the quick deploy shelter system and this enhanced quick deploy ridgeline is to get out of the elements as fast as possible, because in a torrential downpour, especially during the summer season like we're in, we can get soaked to the bone in just a matter of minutes, less than 2 minutes to get soaked to the bone, and then our clothing is compromised. And so having something to set up very quickly means we can get out of the elements, protect that initial layer of protection, which is our clothing, and then create a microclimate with a fire out front to stay warm and protect ourselves. The quick deploy ridgeline, without moving the camera around and getting different angles and clips, took about 20 seconds for us to actually set up. It is very fast and effective. It reduces that time to find toggles around the area or just break sticks and then connect and string up the quick deploy ridgeline, and there's no knots involved. It's all friction held. It's a very efficient survival shelter system to set up. And then all we have to do now is go back, grab that tarp, stringing up the toggles, making sure it's nice and tight on the ridgeline, and then staking out the bottom corners to give us a nice lean-to shelter. The lean-to shelter is a good shelter for displacing rain and getting out of the rain, but not much of a microclimate because 3 sides are open and 1 side is closed. But it's still a great shelter, very fast and efficient to set up for survival and bushcraft. Now, we haven't demonstrated this skill before on the channel, but this is just a bushcraft style pot hanger. And what we want is to get a larger stake that's got a fork at the top, preferably a fork that is dead center with an offshoot, because we're going to hammer on that top portion to get the stake into the ground. And then a longer stick. It was that initial piece we harvested of dead standing material. It was super long and super thin with a little bit of give and flexibility that we're going to use for the actual crane. And then we have a fork section with one of the forks being longer that we're going to use as an anchor point for the back portion of our pot hanger. And you'll see why here in a minute as we begin to carve and hang this bush pot hanger. Now, besides our Y stake, that crane, that long portion, and the anchor portion that we have as part of our pot hanger, we need a long, straight portion that's going to have a hook at the end, and typically that end is going to be an offshoot. We can cut off the excess, leaving just a couple of inches, but this is going to be the actual pot hanger itself we're going to use to suspend that pot over the fire. In this, we're actually going to carve pot hanger notches. Very easy to do, especially with our Swiss Army knife, that Ranger Grip 78. We just take out our knife, and on the back portion away from the hook side of our pot hanger, we're actually just going to carve an X by seesawing back and forth. At the bottom, closest to the hook, we just take our blade and cut up into that material, and we're going to pop out the X, the bottom 3 portions of the X, leaving the top portion of the X in place, which will become the pot hanger notch. We can even use the saw in our Swiss Army knife to cut away material if we're having a hard time, or just for efficiency's sake, and then continue to carve material away, creating that pot hanger knot that's going to go on our crane. On the end of our crane, the portion that's going to be closest to that upright stake away from the anchor point, where we're actually going to attach our pot hanger. This is where we're going to carve just a spade end. We're going to flatten 2 sides of the actual material, and then on top we're going to create a little divot by carving with our knife. That dimple is where that pot hanger notch is going to go. Our pot hanger is good to go. If you'll notice, we created multiple pot hanger notches. That way we can elevate the hook and lower the hook, as well as the bush pot itself, toward the fire or away from the fire as we desire, depending on what we're cooking, if the fire is too hot or too cold. We can elevate and lower that material, and this entire pot hanger setup is held together by friction, gravity, and a little bit of notch carving and some science. Everything is held together easily with those pot hanger notches and that dimple, and the weight of the bush pot along with the liquid inside makes it very easy to use. The stake and the counterbalance at the anchor point, everything is constructed easy for us to use, and you'll see in a minute once we start our fire. Alright, we're going to cheat a little bit with our fire starting today. A storm came through last night. Everything is super soaking wet, and we're out here just for bushcraft. But like I said at the beginning of the video, that bush pot that we have has extra space in it for multiple items, not just the items that we brought. So one of the items we should probably have in there is man-made tinder, just in case if we're out the next day, like today, after a storm last night. Everything is wet, so we're going to need just a little bit of help today. So we're going to use that mini Inferno. The can itself also doubles as a nice visual signal reflecting the sun's rays. But a technique we can use with our Swiss Army knife is using the back of the saw blade, because it has that 90-degree spine. We can use that as a striker on our ferro rod. A technique to help protect ourselves is grab one of our toggles or a stick that acts as a toggle, place it over top of the teeth of the saw to protect ourselves, and then we can really get a good grip on it and bear down if we have to use that ferro rod and really dig in using natural materials that might be wet. We can use this technique to ignite our tinder and place our fire material over top. The bag was full of tea. This has been used, but this is the last little bit of my English breakfast tea that I got at a local tea shop. I actually grew up drinking a lot of tea, and my grandparents moved from the UK over to America during the Korean War era. So we grew up drinking a lot of tea, and I know the importance of having a brew out in the field. So we're going to make one. All right, let's get this brew going. Now, we've got our fire set up, and the beauty of this pot hanger technique is that while it is still static, we can elevate and lower the pot hanger as we decide. We can also move that fire closer or away, or move it in a direction to where we can actually take advantage of the wind and get the flames, the maximum effect of that heat on our bush pot. And so we just hook the bail, hang the pot and the pot hanger where we need it to be over the fire, and then at the proper elevation, move that fire closer by grabbing the sticks that aren't on fire, or grabbing a stick itself and pushing the fire closer, and then just continue to add material. You see that there's a lot of steam and smoke coming off the material because it is very damp, and luckily we had that man-made tinder for our fire starter. But we continue to add material, build up that heat. The remaining damp material will dry out, creating more heat, and eventually we'll just have flames with all these smalls that will build up that material, get that pot boiling, and get our brew on so we can have our breakfast tea, sit and relax under our shelter, and take it easy. As you can see, we can elevate and lower this bush pot hanger very easily. One technique we should do prior to actually hanging that bush pot is leave the D-ring for the lid up so we can actually use a stick to get in there, pop the lid off, and check on our brew. Now, the best way to brew tea out in the field, especially with whole leaves like this, as opposed to tea bags or tea packets, is we don't want to bring it to a boil, although We'll bring it to a boil this morning. Typically, we want to keep it around 190 degrees or so, below boiling point. But we'll bring it to a boil and then immediately take it off of the fire this time. But it's too easy. Bring this up to heat. You'll see the bubbles here forming, and then boil a little bit, and we'll immediately remove it from the heat, just grabbing the pot hanger, lifting it off and placing it out on the ground. And now we can cover this, and we'll be back to check our tea momentarily. Our tea ready. Let's just head back to the shelter real quick, and we can enjoy our tea there. We're going to use just a Australian technique to get the tea to the bottom of the bush pot, or the billy can, as the Aussies would say. Billy Tea, I think, is the brand, but all we have to do is grab the bale and swing the bush pot over our head in a wide arc a few times to use centrifugal force and get the leaves to the bottom of the bush pot so we can enjoy our tea without drinking a bunch of leaves. Once we're ready, just put that bush pot on the forest floor, and we'll crack the lid and see what we've got. That is some nice English breakfast tea, and I think Grandma will be extremely proud that we've made this out in the field. Now we can sit and enjoy the tea under our shelter. One thing to note about tea versus coffee is that coffee and tea, to a lesser extent, are diuretics. Drinking tea will help to decrease the exacerbation of thirst, as well as the diuretics, keeping you hydrated. Alright guys, that does it for this video. A very down and dirty video today, employing our small bushcraft kit, making a shelter, a few bushcraft projects, and then billy tea or field tea out in the field on a hot summer day like today. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Very down and dirty. If you did like this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave me a comment in the comment section. I always appreciate your feedback. I want to thank you guys for everything you do for me, for this channel, for your likes, your views, your subscriptions, your comments, your feedback, and your shares. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.